Good evening, good morning, good night. I really don't know what time is it. We are in back to port, but now we can say that we are back in garage, as we're gonna speak about World of Tanks, and we have a line with veterans. We have Lemon, we have Greg, and we have Alpha. Three guys that they gonna explain what happened, and the World of Tanks had been in the negative side of our gaming lives. And for some people, like me, for example, after the 6.0 update, it was abandoned for every time. No, I'm gonna say it was abandoned just to find another game to push my frustration in other lines. So hello, how are you guys?
Good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, everything's fine. It's good.
Okay, so what do you think about the game, and how do you think about things happened in World of Tanks? Can you give us a mini line, what happened, how that game goes, and what is going till now? Because a lot of things change.
First of all, I'm not sure. I think I'm the oldest player. When did you start playing first, Alfred?
Oh, this was, I guess, 6 years ago. But then I had just as 6.0 dropped, I had like a 2-year break, so I didn't play during the catastrophic continuance after 6.0 dropped. So when I started playing again, it was everything was a bit calmer. But 6 years ago, I would say.
Yeah, I started in August 2015, so I've been playing 7 years now. And when it launched, the game was similar to the PC version that had been out a few years. And the game pretty much just tracked the same as PC tanks. They slowly released lines in the same way that PC did, and the development was largely linear, with the exception that our development team decided to balance their tanks differently. So we ended up with every new line being statistically different from PC, so that their balance changes didn't apply to ours, which most people in console didn't really like. It meant that the popular decisions that were made in PC to nerf overpowered tank destroyers at tier 10, change the class artillery, which is like the carriers in ships, that was reworked. It wasn't on console. So again, the same content kept coming out. They didn't do anything too drastic. They just developed their own balance, really. And that's pretty much how the game stayed until around 6.0.
So we have a classic wargaming game that, if I remember very well, it started in May 2016.
That's about right, yeah.
Okay, so we have the starting version was the version 3, and the game started growing and keep growing, adding content and all that stuff. And I think that the version where the most people joined was the version 4. I mean, between 3.9 version and version 4, I mean, that's around July 2017, if I remember very well, because it was all the great lines that they were from the PC, with some major changes, and anything that it was needed to be done to be a console game and to be fast-paced and to be rated for console players, I think. And I believe that was the time that I started playing the game. I think it was September 2016. Can't remember, but it doesn't matter anymore. So, okay. So it was the classic format. I mean, if we follow the ships and the tanks, it was the same. We had the World of Tanks PC game that it was a very successful game that had a lot of people following and playing the game on the PC. So the console thing happened eventually and started to grow. So what happened in the game, in the middle of the game, that starting to frustrate players, or it was nothing but a good game that started to grow? Can you share your feelings about the game when you started to play the game?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go for it, Alfred.
Okay, well, for me, when I kind of felt that the game was kind of going downhill was when they introduced the Hot Wheels tank, or tanks, because when they introduced that, I certainly got the impression that, okay, things aren't really going bad, really going great, because these tanks looks very toy-ish. They are basically toy tanks. You had a E75 TS, I believe it was called. It was called I think it ironically was called something like the Roger or something like that. Because Roger Dodger, yeah. We have a Roger Dodger in the Discord here. There was that was probably the time for me when I felt that it was going into kind of decline. It sure felt like it, because there were a lot of people that were, well, at least of my friends, that were very, very disappointed in it. That's probably the only main thing for me personally, because I enjoyed, for instance, the mercenary tanks.
Okay.
A lot of people did not like that, but I really liked it. So it was just the Hot Wheel stuff for me that made it. I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, I remember when the Mercs came to the world of tanks in console, that it was something that split the community, because many of them said that they had zero consistency on the history of the World War II, but it was something extraordinary for some other people to start grind the contracts, and there is a grind behind every mercenary tanks and all of that make it somehow interesting. So I think that community then received a lot of 50-50 opinions. But if I remember very well, the mercenaries tanks were OP. Please correct me if not.
Yeah, we had a couple of tanks that were like very, very overpowered. I remember when they announced the machine.
Yeah.
An AMX 50B hull with the chieftain turret with the TVP 5051's auto cannon. Is that correct? The autoloader?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. With but I think it was below 20-second reload, and I'm very sure I saw a YouTube clip of one of those machines ramming an E100 for something like 800, 900 hit points, where itself didn't take that much, and the clip potential was really insane burst damage and that quick of a reload with that accurate gun. So yeah, that was overpowered, and I mean, in a way, I guess it's still overpowered.
It was crazy considering they just nerfed the TVP gun on the TVP, saying it was too strong and it was doing too much burst damage. And the TVP isn't a particularly fast machine. It's not got good camo. It's got no armor. And then along came the machine that had the same gun pre-nerf. It could go 55 kilometers an hour. It weighed 50 ton. It had fantastic armor, and it just made a mockery of the tech tree. So the machine was certainly quite a controversial choice.
It was very quick too.
But
mobile.
Excuse me, if I recall my memories back on the days, every premium tank that was released in the store, it was kind of OP. I mean, in the first days of the update, you get your extra premium SIP that you were grading on the missions and the states that they needed to grind so you can have the tank. And if I remember very well, my first grind was the Fatherland. Yeah, it was the Fatherland, the red IS tank that it was super duper OP at the time because nobody can penetrate a hull down Soviet tank at the time because we didn't know how to penetrate that thing. And every premium ship that it was dropped at the time, it was kinda OP. And the thing that it really give me strange feelings back at the time was that every OP premium ship was then, after a few updates, it was nerfed. So I was kinda skeptical about buying some tanks because I knew that it's gonna be an OP period, and after that period it's gonna be nerfed to keep the balance going. So I was frustrated about that. But what are your thoughts about it?
I would say the wargaming console have got a lot of faults, but nerfing premiums wasn't something they did particularly. And everything I say during this podcast will have to have a caveat that I am only going off my community from Reddit. You know, we're the vocal ones. We're the ones asking for things. So whenever I say something like, "Oh, I people wanted this," what I really mean is Reddit, because that's my experience. But I didn't really hear any complaints of the Fatherland being strong or premiums around that time being overpowered, and certainly following ships, they didn't really touch premiums. If anything, they got buffed. There was a particular patch where the infamous Rampanzer at tier 5 are extremely overpowered, probably tier for tier the most overpowered tank in the game, actually got a buff, which just demonstrated they didn't know how to balance tanks. So I don't remember any having particular nerfs, especially ones that made them unusable. The only time I've ever seen a tank in the game get nerfed so bad that it was, you probably wouldn't have bought it, was post 6.0 called the Armadillo, and Wargaming offered refunds because they simply had to nerf it. So I'd have to say that the overpowered premiums was the least of World of Tanks consoles problems. It certainly wasn't something that drove the majority of players away. There were far worse things.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, some of the premiums were weaker. Like the Vindicator, you know, it's a horrible version of the Charioteer.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
But
Brick, those were horrible. A lot of the skull cap, a lot of the actual mercenary line premiums, actually pretty forgettable.
Yeah. But can you tell me something about the preferential matchmaking? I mean, now.
Sure.
Okay, so there are some premiums that had +1 tier only, and not going +2 tiers. That it was the main matchmaking. So it was some premium ships that you can grab them at tier 5, and the only thing that you can see for to face, it was just a tier above. In the worst case scenario, a tier 6. So it was kinda a preferential matchmaking. It was something giving a boost to the premium ships tanks that had that preferential matchmaking. How do you feel about that? Is it something that gave the community happy hours to join the game?
So everything we can talk about tonight will ultimately lead to why so many people have left the game, and the preferential matchmaking tanks are part of a larger issue that nobody enjoys. +2, -2 matchmaking. Well, a good majority don't. A few people like the challenge of facing higher tier tanks, but most of the time people do not enjoy being in a tier 8 against a tier 10. It's just not fun. There is no way you can realistically handle that jump in armor and alpha and speed, and so preferential tanks were very popular because they saw +1, -1 matchmaking like Ship's console does, and people find that fair. We have wanted +1, -1 matchmaking since beta. It's always been something requested, and they have never ever really considered it up until a couple of years ago, where they started running +1, -1 events, where for the week or the weekend you would only see up, one tier up or one tier down, and they were absolutely fantastic. It was just a fantastic way to enjoy and play the game, but they were only limited time. And then recently, within the last 6 months, we received information from Wargaming that now essentially the population is so low that they cannot implement +1, -1 because it would create matchmaking fails. People would be in queues for so long, the matchmaking would fail. So preferential matchmaking tanks will always be enjoyable to people because it gives them a taste of what they would really like matchmaking to be.
Okay, so we can feel how it is to be in a safe environment, or how to be in a tier 8 tank and you can face tier 10 tanks. So it is a big bad. But if I remember very well, and please correct me everything I say because my memory sometimes make games, it was the matchmaking was making games that if you were 3 times in a low tier, that the 4th game you can be up tiered and you can be in top of the tier of the matchmaking. So you're gonna face a low tiers tanks. Does this thing still counts after 3 games that the RNG give you top matchmaking?
That's only true if you stay in the same tank. Apparently, Wargaming said that if you're in a tier 8, I don't know, IS3, and you play 2 games in the IS3 and you're bottom tier, but then you swap to Persian, it'll kind of reset that. But if you continue to play in the IS3, then yes, I think something like the 4th game, you will be not bottom tier.
Okay. So we solved that issue very well. So I think that we are at the moment, we are at the era of 2018, and we are going to 2019, and I see we are on the version 4.9. We have the first Italian tank, Ariete, and also the Fave 4202, following by the Italian medium line in the same month. Can you remember what was the era at the moment that March? What happened with the Italian medium line?
Do you want to take that, Greg?
Well, that's what 2018 is actually when I started playing. So coming up on exactly 4 years. It was November of 18. And yeah, I remember that being like a big splash. The Italian medium starting out as they typically do when they introduce a new tech tree line. They'll tease it first with a premium from that nation, and we'd had auto loaders, but that had the auto reloader mechanic where you could it would reload. You didn't have to reload the whole magazine at once, so that was a novel concept. I feel it was pretty well received. The premium is actually it's a decent, it's a very viable tank at tier 8. Definitely a unique gameplay style at that time. Tech tree came along and I think it was actually pretty well received. They weren't outstanding, but they also weren't horrible. They were just probably about what they should have been for the medium line.
They were another example of the Wargaming console development team developing their own balance, because everything that came from PC, it was almost expected that they would arrive in a nerf state, and they didn't like the comparison that we always drew with PC, because they were saying, well, we were our own game, but they weren't really, because they still took every single tank from the other game and played them in the same maps against the same tanks, but they always changed the stats and they were always worse. So each shell in the Italian medium clips were all like 2 or 3 seconds slower reloading. So there was disgruntlement that they were nerfed from PC. But again, it's debatable whether that was appropriate for the console meta or not.
Yeah, as long as it happens to everybody, everybody's kind of stays consistent, and it seemed to happen every tank that came over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that at the proper time, the best thing that happened after those months was the big update calling Valor. So it was April 2020. It was the first big, I'm gonna say, update, and we had the introduction of the Battle Pass. Can you explain to people what happened there and why some people say that the Valor update was the last update that hold some dignity in the world of Tanks?
Well, I've got a perspective on that. What we skipped over there was the whole year where we basically had I forget what it's even called, but the seasons where we had 3-month op, one for each season.
Yeah. You mean the spring games, spring, summer games, autumn games?
Yes.
Yeah. I forget what the whole name for the whole year was, but you basically, it's how you earn the 279E. And for actually a long time after that was the only way you could have ever got that tank. Is by completing, I think, 3 of the 4 seasons. If you completed all 4, you got a special camo. And so that was actually, that's sort of like exactly where I started. And it was just, there were these constant ops, and you didn't have to, they weren't a battle pass mode, but there were stages that you could only unlock and realize the prizes if you had premium time on your account at the time. So it was kind of a precursor of what was about to come, right? Sort of there's ops, but you're gonna have to put a little bit of something into the till to get all the prizes out of it.
Yeah, I think if I remember very well, it was a very long-term grind. I mean, you have to be there every time. It was like a job.
It was. It was. And it lasted for a whole calendar year.
Yeah.
To give an overview at where World of Tanks console was when that was released, the biggest complaints about the game at that point were we wanted balancing. So we were getting down to the nitty gritty, saying like the T110E4 didn't need 850 alpha, the Death Star didn't need 283 millimeters of HESH pen. So the game, looking back, was in a really good state because the most we could say was, please balance these tanks, change some numbers so it's a bit fair of a battleground. There was no complaints about stupid mechanics or the massive pay to win. It was going all right. Valor was fantastic. It really did look like the direction they were taking it was war themed. Appropriate for a tank game. They were giving good things away. They weren't. I find like Warships Legends is quite stingy with what they give away. They tend to give away low tier, like tier 3 premiums, whereas Tanks was starting to give away tier 9, 10s.
And tanks that are still very viable today, years later. They're still good tanks at their tier. Very good tanks.
It was great. I would say at Valor, with the only things we were complaining about were the ubiquitous artillery complaints and whether they could balance the tanks better. And there wasn't, and +2, -2 matchmaking. They were always present, but that was all there was. Everything else was pretty good in game. And Valor was probably the last time that everybody had some respect for it.
And it was also a sort of a rebranding because it really took focus off of, because it used to be even called, right, in the splash screen, World of Tanks Mercenaries. Which, again, we touched on that. A lot of people just despise that, the historical, diehards that said these are just Frankenstein tanks, they did never exist, and they were repulsed by it. So we got World of Tanks Valor as sort of the new brand, which I think a lot of people just sigh of relief. It's like, great. Tanks are still in the game, but at least the game's not called that anymore. It felt like a really good step forward.
Okay, so we are here in the edge of the cliff with the Valor, and
Yeah,
I think
it's all downhill from here.
okay.
Well, that's not exactly true. There was a bright spot. We had crossplay before we got to 6.0.
Yes, and before we go to the things that you are saying, British slides, June 2020, after the Valor update, that was the April, and we are now going to the version 5. July 2020, it was a very good patch, if I remember. If my feelings let me let me feel something about that game, and as you said, guys, there is the crossplay for PlayStation and Xbox, and also for some people that remember the end of the 360 version of the Xbox. That means that there gonna be significant changes in the graphics section with a lot of graphic update, and many people said back then that the 360 version was something that kept the game back. If I remember, that was my feeling on the July 2020 when they announced that thing. And I remember that it was a very good patch, the version 5. It was between Hot Wheels and SummerSlam updates.
Well, it arrived at the same time. The SummerSlam, that was why it was a little bit controversial, because up to that point we hadn't had any of these collaborations. There was nothing in the game really that was another company. And then 5.0 dropped, and as you say, crossplay was well received because it increased the population for us all. 360 was dropped, which was holding us back graphically and performance-wise. But they also dropped the SummerSlam season pass, and that's when the controversy started. In fact, sadly, the internet is a salty place, and wargaming deserve a lot of criticism and praise. Unfortunately, the criticism outweighed the praise, and people ignored the good things because all of a sudden our tanks, instead of sitting in a garage or a jungle, they were sitting in a wrestling ring, and it was not well received.
I remember. Exactly.
Yeah, for me it was great because I was a PlayStation player, but yet almost everybody I communicated with on the Reddit and in Discord, I was like this odd duck because I was like one of the only PlayStation people I think they even talked to or acknowledged their existence. And so yeah, it was all the people that I consider like, I guess friends or acquaintances with the game, couldn't play with because they were all on a different platform. It got to the point where I actually did go out and buy an Xbox. I was going to restart my account, just to be able to platoon with people and play the game. And then crossplay came along and solved that problem. Then yeah, as we're probably about to talk about, introduced a few new ones.
Okay, it was a time that did you guys felt that the population of the game was declining, or it was getting fewer and fewer? Do you have that sense, or it was very good? You could find the match very easy.
Yeah, around that time we were still probably looking at six figures, so we were talking 100,000 plus at peak time. So finding a match was not a problem. And then even if you might have been losing a few people, the crossplay obviously increased the population a lot more. So at that point, there was certainly a fairly healthy community that would have been able to sustain +1, -1 matchmaking at the time, probably.
Well, plus between the COVID quarantines, everybody was just playing video games, and that was about it.
Yeah, it was a time that every video game was picked in population, and many things created, many opportunities grabbed, and many things were exploded in all the parts of of the world. So we have the July and the September 2020, the second season with the Hot Wheels, and it is the time that the Hot Wheels brought something in the community that no one liked it. And I say no one liked it. It was very controversial. I remember the memes on some social groups on Reddit and on Facebook and everything, that they kept mocking the Hot Wheels and all that stuff. It was something that really, it was a prelude to what is going to happen in the next version. So do you have any statements on that last September month, October of 2020, with the Hot Wheels collaboration that people were crazy about it?
The thing I saw two things. It was one of the first times since I started playing when they did that major update, you know, and one thing they are still, I think, really as a developer lacking in is consistency. Their code base, you know, they fix one thing, they patch, and something gets fixed and two other things get broken, or they always exceed their expected downtime windows. And I recall actually being very, I guess, impressed to the point that I actually wrote about it on Reddit. Like, well, at least they're looking like a real software company, you know. They did a major patch upgrade, a new season. They were within the downtime window. Everything, even though the garage looks horrible, seems to pretty much work the first time through. But the downside for me was the laziness of the development of the new tanks, because they issued a 4-pack of tanks that were all essentially the exact same tank, same stats, same nation, just with 4 different skins. And for me, that was like the. For some reason, that just really hit me in a way that nothing else they'd ever done had before. Just the thought that we're going to go out and buy 4 of the exact same tank. Really? You think that we're really going to do that? And some people did, but that really sort of set me on a negative path.
I think the saddest thing about Hot Wheels is that it wasn't necessarily any better or worse in terms of a theme than wrestling. Wrestling doesn't belong in a tank game, whereas Hot Wheels is technically wheeled vehicles. It was more about you just suddenly gone from having your historical tanks, watching ISs and Tigers rolling around the battlefield, and then suddenly you had, like the Roger Dodger and the Rip Rod and these little toy things whizzing around, and that didn't sit well with a lot of people. It wasn't a deal breaker, I wouldn't say necessarily people immediately quit because of it, but there was a lot of rumbling then suddenly that it didn't feel the same game.
All right. I think that you covered the issue very well, and now we are going to the version 6. It is December 2020, and there is a complete overhaul of the game. And when we say complete overhaul of the game, it's something that no one could believe it will pass the quality team, the QA, say. They all dropped the mouth and say, this thing is unplayable. And it is time that community manager, if I remember, was the Minto,
yeah.
Yeah. The guy that made huge efforts so he can persuade the players and grab the feedback and how to ease the pain and the fire that was going on the community. So I want your reactions with your truly emotion on that time.
Okay.
And the day that you opened the console.
I can relate the story. So at that time, I had signed an NDA. Minto really was the first community manager that was very, very active and community focused since Saberwing, which was the guy who started it all really back in 2015. When he left, there was not a great community involvement from Wargaming, and then Minto came in and really stepped it up. He was totally engaged, enthusiastic, and he sort of created positions for us at Reddit. I was like a community ambassador, and I signed NDA, and he said, right, yeah, we want a stream for this new 6.0 update, and so it was going to be me, a Turkey Tank, who was a popular, extremely good light tank YouTuber, and another guy called Petty360, who's another YouTube community contributor, and all three of us were going to go live on the 6.0 release date in the evening to talk about the new patch. So I got home from work, downloaded the patch, jumped on the game, and then I joined a Skype call with Minto and Tanks from Wargaming, and I said, guys, I don't understand what you've done. I can't play this game. And I said, I can't even begin to list the reasons why I can't play it, because it feels like a different game. I tried writing it all down and sending it over to him, and by the time the sort of half an hour, 45-minute phone call had ended, they decided to pull the stream because all the social media was on fire. Everybody that they were looking at on Facebook, Twitter, the forums, Reddit, was just like, what has happened? This is not the same game. All the colors were wrong, the UI was wrong, the controls were wrong. The colorblind mode, this is just a unique thing to me, I'm colorblind. The colorblind mode had gone from being two colors that were distinguishable to the opposite. That actually confused me, they made it worse for me. So I couldn't sense where I was getting shot from, I couldn't see which one the enemy was, the friendly tank. It was like they'd released a new game. Totally different. Did you, Alfred, did you find the same thing on release date?
It was horrible. Like, they just totally removed the whole soul from the game. And I mean, I was playing a ton, and at that time I was actually on my race to finish unlocking all the tier 10s. I think I only had 2 left, and not even, just the look of the game itself. Like, it was dark, the sound effects weren't the same, it had no soul. They put these filters on almost every map. And by the way, we only had 1/3 of the maps that we used to have. Then there's this linear vehicle progression that came in, and so if you're grinding tanks, this just turned everything upside down. It was. I actually remember I didn't even play the game for 2 days. I was actually afraid to go into a battle, mostly because of what I was seeing in the garage, and also what I was reading on Reddit and in their old, now defunct forums. Because they also changed commanders as well with that. All the commander stuff changed, and we had all new skills, and didn't even know how to reset up a commander, what was the right way to do it. And I just sat there for 2 days just navigating the garage and trying to just figure out, before I even went into a battle, what is this thing I'm looking at?
There was not a single thing the same, was there? I don't think the garage was different, the commander's different, the tech tree was different, the way you research tanks was different, and the gameplay was different. I mean, can you think of anything they kept?
I mean, aside from the actual tanks?
Yeah.
No, there wasn't a single thing. Even the tech tree, which used to be, it was horizontal. They turned it into vertical. Now it's a real tree. It goes from the ground up. Yeah, nobody cares, because that wasn't one of our bigger problems. We've been used to it. Like, the cognitive friction was created by just for the sake of change, or because of some other necessity that was never explained to us, was just overwhelming. Every aspect of the game was just turned upside down, and very little of it, in fact almost none of it at the outset, was any better. So there were just so many bugs, and there was so many things that hadn't been thought through.
Do you remember, guys, the lance screen that had 3 warriors, the Rambo?
Yeah, that was the Wins the Warriors season.
Yeah, I mean, it was hilarious for me. I mean, from the era of the World of War II, you straight up going to something that it was. I'm gonna say. Do you remember a game that was released on the console with modern tanks? It was called Modern Armor, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember the studio. It was exactly like that. It was like this. Like, you put the developers of that studio, you take them, or you take the code.
Was it Genshin or Gaiden, something like that?
Armored Warfare.
Armored Warfare. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, the studio. Who was the studio for it?
I don't remember the studio.
Was it Gaiden?
Was it, or was that War? I can't remember.
That's War Thunder.
Yeah.
I mean, the game was dead and stalling in the consoles. I mean, there were no players in it, but it was a very good job displaying tanks that were modern and all that stuff. So when I opened the game, as you said, on the 6th version, I said, come on, guys. This is another game. This like they take the code of that game and they put it in the server. I was like, come on, guys, it can't be true. I said that thing. I wonder how that thing passed even on the super test, but this is something that it doesn't matter.
Well, I think that's what happened essentially. You know, at that point they hadn't released Cold War, which is obviously the direction that the game's gone these days. And clearly they had been coding Cold War in the background. And for whatever reason, they pushed all that code onto World War II, so that everything had changed because it was essentially Cold War, but they hadn't shown us Cold War yet, so there was no explanation. It just had the feeling that suddenly someone overnight had said, "Hey, you know, it's a good idea. Let's turn all the Cold War stuff we had planned and dump it onto World War II." And so, without warning, we woke up one day and it was a different game, because then, obviously, a few months later, we get Cold War and you can see the influence and what they were trying to do. To this day, no one will ever really know why World War II wasn't kept the same. But that's why it's taken so long to get the game back to where it was in, because they had said before, every time there was a bug or a problem with the game, the developers and the studio that Wargaming Chicago Baltimore started with was no longer there. So it was actually a nightmare to solve any coding issues, because they didn't really understand their own code. So Cold War was a chance for them to rewrite their own code so that they could fully implement any changes and edit any bugs. But they did it in such a dramatic way that at that point it pretty much was the death of the community. It might be salvageable, but at that point we lost thousands. Just on Reddit alone, the numbers of old-time veterans and faces, they just vanished. And a good majority haven't come back. A few of them have, as they've slowly fixed the game, but that day really, really crucified the game.
Quite a lot of them have joined us.
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I bought the console. Actually, I bought my console in 2018. I bought it never intending to play World of Tanks, actually, and found World of Tanks. I actually saw a TV commercial for it, which now I know is the PC version. But downloaded it, started to play it, and it became the only thing I played. And after 6, I went looking. I started playing Warships. I played Warships for about a month. I still have the account. I went back and finished, Red Dead. I went back and all these games that I had bought the console for, I went back and played them, and really didn't touch tanks for quite a while.
From a novice perspective, I was exactly the same. I was straight up constant with World of Tanks. It was the only thing that I played pretty much every single day. And right as that patch came in, I literally played 2 games, and then that were it. I uninstalled and I went and did something else. I don't think it was immediately the Warships console, but it went from enjoyable to I can't play this. I don't know what's happening. It's interesting. Basically, everything that you said, Lemon, is something that I completely agreed with and completely experienced as well. Like, I didn't know where I was getting shot from. I had no clue. I remember there was one time I was on a ridgeline, I got hit in the back. I was like, how am I getting hit in the back from hit? Why is everything orange and purple now? I couldn't deal with it.
The game completely lost its soul. Like, all the feedback, the sensory feedback that you take for granted, we had just learned from pre-6, and the colors and the sound and the direction, even down to the vibration of the controller, it was all just so nuanced, and it all combined to give you almost everything you needed. It's like it was just all gone, or it was turned inside out and didn't do what it was supposed to do anymore.
it was one of those things where we didn't realise what we had until it was gone. We had criticisms mostly because we were all passionate and we all love the game. When you see moaning and discourse on Reddit, it's normally because people want the game to be as good as it can be at the end of the day. I don't know, some people just like moaning, but some people are generally saying, I'm not happy with this because, and then it's a reason they think the game can be better. And at the end of the day, we're all there because we love the game. It's very unique. It doesn't have a competitor, essentially. There's mechanics that you just don't get anywhere else. And all of a sudden, with the best will in the world, you couldn't play the game. It was so different. And even with all the imbalance and issues that the game had before with toy tanks, you would have gone back in a heartbeat just to experience the gameplay, which was the core essence of the game. Because now you couldn't do it. You just, I was a fairly successful player, and would normally be one of the last ones alive doing damage, and I was dying like a minute into the game, and I couldn't work it out. It was almost like you've been blindfolded.
There we go. Sorry for interrupting. You guys should be able to hear me now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, finally. Discord. Go home, you're drunk.
Yeah.
What do you think about? How did you find 6.0, Alfred?
If anybody listens, sorry for the inconvenience. I had some technical troubles for some reason. I kind of took my break when 6.0 first got introduced. So I have a memory of the desert garage, you could call it, where it was very, very barren. Didn't have any real... wasn't really anything in the garage, and as you guys said before, the tech trees and stuff. So I took a break for something like 2 years, and picked it. Yeah, I decided to play some other games. I did a very big mistake. Very many gamers do. I started playing Skyrim, and then I was lost for a long time. But then I decided, fuck it, I'm gonna try it one more time. And when I started, it was the season with T72 Euro. So it was pretty recent. I think it is like 4 seasons ago I started playing again, and it looked a hell of a lot better. Like really a lot better. And I got introduced to Cold War, which for me saved World of Tanks. Because of one reason. Artillery. There is no artillery in Cold War. So in a way, 6.0 for me was the savior of World of Tanks.
Okay, so you think that the line that people say no arty, no party, does it still count? Because artillery players have their own specs, have their own culture of life, and they are a part of the problem as community expects them. But I don't know, it's exactly the same with the CVs on the ships that we have. It is a class that is really problematic because it has some gimmicks that people can understand, and especially it is frustrated when you are driving your tank and you are sitting behind a rock finding some cover, and somehow a shell from the artillery kill you instantly. So I can relate the frustration of the hate about the artillery players, but they are part of the game, so there's something to be done. But 5 platoon artillery, it was something that it was crazy.
I think artillery, without debating artillery, because it doesn't achieve anything, having the argument back and forth between whether artillery is okay or not doesn't really achieve much. But PC obviously is a 10-20 times bigger game than our versions. Same for Warships PC compared to Legends. And PC obviously know what they're doing because they're very successful, and they have reworked artillery 2 to 3 times. So if the devs of the biggest, most successful World of Tanks game have worked out that something needed to be done, I still don't understand why console have not. And obviously, my opinion is that if there's no smoke, there's no fire. It's the most hotly debated subject that I would see in the community, bar none. So there must be something going on for there to be that much rabble and discussion about it. So I'm with Alfred completely. I'm a total Cold War convert because I can just play my game without being just randomly one shot out of the game. And if the Cold War hadn't have come and they just changed 6.0 to World War II like they did, I probably wouldn't be playing it now.
I can pretty much describe artillery as it is now, and I'm very sure a lot of people will agree with this also. Imagine you're out taking a stroll. You just bought ice cream, the sun is shining, it's a very pleasant day, and all of a sudden somebody throws a cactus on your head from the 5th floor.
Yeah. Okay.
That is pretty much how it is. And when it was 5-man platoon, there was 5 people throwing cactuses at you.
Yeah. That was the perfect example I ever had in my life. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But still,
real big cactuses.
Yeah. Still, the developers didn't want to touch or rework or make big changes. But guys, I want you to tell me something about the 6.0. Do you think that the excuse that Wargaming gave to the community, they said that we fired all the people from the studio in America and we have our new guys, so they didn't want to touch the code of the previous guys, so they had to restart and make a new code. So that's why 6.0 happened. Do you agree with that thing? Do you find it normal?
That's a difficult one to answer for me under NDA. I believe part of that story to be true. There are a lot of other elements to that, which I can't go into. The code was certainly something I was told, unless this was a line just for community ambassadors and contributors, that they did need to take control of their own code and rewrite it. The fact that they rewrote the code they wrote the Cold War code, but then implemented it into World War II, that's the biggest question about why that was done. Why didn't they rewrite World War II code to function the same, but they have control over it and they have an understanding of that code. Merging the two to be the same was the fatal mistake, without any warning, without any stages. And then even more so that the impact of that was that, as Greg said, there was only like 8-9 maps when 6.0 dropped, and that's because they had to recode all the maps for the new code, which has taken years of development to get back in the States, as with everything. Having like chevrons above the tank rather than the tank name and the health bars, the colorblind mode, they had to do the code for everything, so it smacked of being released far too soon. It wasn't ready for release. They hadn't finished it, and then they butchered the World War II version of it as well. So, it is all code based, but not full.
Okay, because there are a lot of conspiracy theories about things. As I said, for a conspiracy theory for the codes and the studio in America, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that the community brought in hot topics, saying that Wargaming wanted to kill the veteran players, and they wanted to start with a new bunch of players that they will try the new era of the game, and they wanted to recreate the player base. And saying about the veterans, I mean, if you are a veteran player in Wargaming industry, you know how to bring the lines, you know how to cut the time, you know how to aim and take the trophies and all that stuff. So veteran players in World of Tanks console were the players that they were not spending a lot of money in the game, because they had so many tanks and they had so many lines, they had so many events that they grinded a few years ago, that they had almost everything. So it was something that Wargaming wanted to get rid of with they wanted to shake them off of the strategies. So it was another conspiracy theory that I can confirm, but I can say it. I really don't know how that feels. If you, as a veteran, have something to say about that, do you agree with that, or it is another tinfoil hat?
I feel like if you step back and look at it, you can make that conspiracy fit. You can certainly recreate it, but I would also say that if they did that, they created almost the perfect plan to execute that and make it happen. And that just ascribes such a level of, I'm going to say, aptitude to them that we have never seen. So if you're good enough to pull that off, you wouldn't have made all the other mistakes that we've seen them make when it comes to marketing and player retention, or just player engagement. I get it, and you're right. Economics of it, certain players no longer are a revenue stream. I haven't spent money on the game in over 2 years. Most of that was because of 6, because I don't need to anymore. I get everything I need just by playing the game and playing it at a decent enough level that the ops kind of keep it funded. But I don't know. I feel that that's one of those that just seems a little bit too far-fetched. That they're just not. I don't think they were ever good enough to pull off a plan that elaborate. That was their goal. It almost worked perfectly.
And that is exactly what they want you to think.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it always feels like that's what it achieved. So maybe the theories evolved, as Greg said, to fit that. It did kill a lot of veterans off, and it brought a different demographic who wanted the tie-ins with other companies that we've had, like Hot Wheels and stuff. That brought a different demographic. So I think it's almost like, making the theory fit what actually happened.
And to be honest, I don't really see the reasoning why they would like to kill off veteran players, because it is the veteran players that keeps the games alive, and well, at least for me, it brings new people into the game. It's kind of like I would tell some of the fans to like one of my bands that, hey, I've been a long time fan of a band. Oh, yeah, great. Now fuck off and die. I mean, it wouldn't be that fun,
Wait, Wargaming rewards veterans to anything? Interesting.
Well,
I think what
I do.
I don't want to say this is cause or effect. Even if you look at the stuff we have in the game currently, even the passes, like just the ops, they are definitely skewed towards better players, more skilled players with the better equipment and the higher tiers. Because they're things like the achievements, they're damage based. They're certain accomplishments in the game base that honestly, a new player, it takes them so much more effort and time and battles to achieve the same outcome. So in a way, if you're a veteran player with a huge supply of tanks and skill to use them, you can blow through all these ops and acquire more things, acquire more tanks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't play the season now because I'm playing Legends so much. I wait until the 7 weeks of the season operations have accumulated, because unlike Legends, where you have to work through the campaign 1 week of operations at a time, you can complete all the World of Tanks console ones simultaneously. So my record is to complete a season on the final weekend. So Tuesday reset, I'd start Saturday, and by Monday I'd have the season complete. Just because a lot of them overlap, or if you're having big damage games and big assist games and big kill games, then you're ticking off loads really fast. So Greg's right in the fact that if you're half decent at the game, you are going to smash the ops and it'll fund you forever. They throw stuff at you these days, which, depending on how cynical you are, will be a case of trying to keep player bases, because there's at least 2 or 3 different, either season ops, the season itself, or some giveaway that's running that you could probably earn 3 or 4 or 5 tanks at the same time.
Okay, so let me say something. So we are on the 6.0, and after a few months, Minto leaves the game. He sends a tweet and says that he thanks all the community of the World of. I'm leaving for something else, for something different. So can you guys, because you were elaborating with him, especially on Discord, for this, what happened with Minto?
I personally, sorry for interrupting. Personally, I have. I think you have to ask Roger or Lemon about this, because I stay far away from everything that is called drama. So I have absolutely no idea what the reason behind that is, or what happened, and the instances surrounding it.
I mean, I can give you a first-hand experience, because Minto was a Brit like me, and he grew up only 30-40 miles away from me, so we became quite good friends. And Minto told me the 6.0 was a baptism of fire for him. He hadn't been in the job long, and then the biggest and worst thing that ever happened to the game was on his watch, and he was never the same. He found it extremely stressful, the pressure both from above and below. You know, we were giving him grief. What the hell have you done to the game? And then obviously the bosses were saying, you know, you need to put these fires out. And he was never the same after that. He got another job that was in an area of gaming that he was interested in, had better opportunities, and he just wanted, I think, to put the whole episode behind him, because it ruined what it was his ideal job. He was really enjoying it, and then I don't envy him. Nobody would have been happy with the community manager position during that time. So as soon as he had this job, he took it and said, you know, I need a fresh start.
Okay, yeah. So next thing that is going on the World of Tanks is that now you have a new community manager. That it was from us. It was from the Legends team. I mean, TK, very, very great community manager. And I'm giving these words because I had a collaboration with him in the World of Warship Legends. Involved in the Reddit. He was almost in every aspect of the community, in every line of Reddit, in every line of social media, Discord, and all that stuff. He was there. He was a great player, also a great competitive player on the PC side of the World of Warships back that time. So he really knew how to drive the train that called World of Warships Legends. And suddenly he said on the stream that he is leaving for another position, and he came to World of Tanks. Tell me the impressions of that guy. What do you think? And the changes that you were... So many changes in a few months, from community managers to developers to the game, and how you receive Chris as a community manager in World of Tanks. Because he's really vocal, and he's really trying to get the feedback of the community.
Do you want me to answer this, guys?
Yeah.
So Chris, I was worried when I lost Minto, because Minto was the first proper community manager that I felt that we'd had in 6-7 years, that really cared and got involved, and I didn't know what to expect from Tikana. I popped over to ships before I'd even started playing ships to see that it looked like he was going to be very, very sorely missed. So that was a good sign. But I never thought I would end up having the same working relationship where, you know, we chat regularly. He tells me what they want. Minto would tell me what he wanted from Reddit, you know, if he needed to share some information or run some sort of event. And then we'd discuss up and coming things under NDA. And it was just brilliant. It was exactly what I wanted. And, you know, I had no idea whether Chris would offer me that. And within the first day or two of conversation with him, I felt like this was just as committed, just as switched on, an engaged guy. And after a couple of weeks, I would say I had that same relationship that I had with Minto. A different personality. Minto was a softer approach, and Chris was not messing around. You know, if there was a problem to be fixed, Chris was all over it. And it's kind of what we needed, because we felt for so long that the Wargaming team didn't really connect with us and didn't listen to us. Again, like I said much earlier in this, when I say us, I'm just talking about the small Reddit community. You know, there's tens of thousands of players out there, not necessarily represented by Reddit, but the people on Reddit are the people that I represent. And he was engaging straight away. He was all over Reddit. He was talking to me. We were getting things done. And he interacted on our behalf with Wargaming, and he was pushing things through. There was already things I'd say, you know, Chris, this needs fixing, and he'd come back and say, you know, I've worked on this, I've managed to push it through. It doesn't necessarily make him popular sometimes on both sides, but he's definitely doing the right thing for the game.
Okay, that's good, because in the legend side, he was really a pain in some developers' head, because he wanted to push community things, he wanted to push certain things that the game had changed. So he was he's a pain in every developer. yeah,
but that's what we needed. That's absolutely what we needed.
Yeah. So I can see that now Wargaming after the 6-0 points, he tried to engage more with the community. He tried to put an ear exactly in the heart of the community, so they can hear the vibes and they can hear all the things. They are trying to, fix some things, mark of excellence, all that stuff that is going crazy at the moment. But I think that you are in a good road of enjoying that game again, or not. It's up to you. But that's why you are here. You have to tell us if the World of Tanks console is going on a good road, it is back on track, or it is derailed again. What are your opinions about that?
I think there's been irreparable damage done to the game. It'll never be the same as it was pre 6.0, and they'll never get the player base back from 6.0. You can see it in the numbers. It's too far gone to get back to that point. However, I still love the game, and I would say since 6.0, the game's probably in the best state that it could possibly be. They've tried to put everything back that we've asked for, and they've done 90% of that. And I don't have an issue with what they are currently implementing. And with Tikana's help, they're trying to release it in a direction that the people that are left do enjoy. But I don't know about you other guys. It'll never be the same, will it?
Well, for me, I'm very biased towards Cold War, because I rarely play World War II. It's the times I play World War II is where I meme around with radius in low tiers, ceiling clubs. But well, when it comes to, if anybody wants to come back and try Cold War, I really recommend it, because you don't have Arty. And another thing with the Cold War is that +2, -2 isn't really a thing, because take for instance the T-72 Ural, which was the first Cold War premium I got from the season pass when I started playing tanks again. The T-72 Ural can still fight like a T-72 AV, which is the Era 2 top tier T-72. And every tank in the game can fight every tank in the game when it comes to Cold War. So in a way, it's very balanced. Although recently they released a very odd tank with rockets that kinda is one of the more OP tanks if you can play it. So it is starting to become maybe a bit, I don't know what to say, maybe a bit uncontrolled when it comes to new premium tanks. But then again, they released the FV4211 to everyone that played during that season pass. So I mean, it's a benchmark for tanks, I guess, or ground. But yeah, Cold War really is. I think it has a future, personally.
I think they really covered it. But yeah, it's still the only game I play. I play it every day. Like Lemon said earlier, there's nothing else quite like that. If there is, I haven't found it. I don't want to restart. Cold War was great for me. I'm kind of a completionist. Didn't realize this about myself to this extent until I discovered this game, and then it's like I need to unlock every tank, and I need to unlock every tank in World War II, and I need to keep unlocking all the tanks as they introduce new tanks. And I still find it interesting. It's got anything anybody wants. If you don't want Arty, you got Cold War. There's still tons of variety. They're bringing back maps. Controversially, I think they're bringing back some maps that just didn't need back, but just for the sake of trying to, again, appease a player base that just keeps asking for the, to get the game back that we had 2 years ago. Maps are coming back. New tanks are coming out in both modes, and there's still people who say, "Oh, they're sacrificing World War II and only focusing on Cold War." There's still World War II tanks that are coming out all the time, and I think they're doing a good job trying to at least release content for both. Admittedly, there's a limit to World War II. That period did end. There's only so many tanks in the world, and I think Cold War is going to see that same thing. They've kind of boxed themselves into a specific time period, and they've also seemed, at the exception of G.I. Joe, really going down a path of only putting tanks in that were actually built in steel. Getting away from a lot of the prototype, and this was only a blueprint stuff like we have in World War II. So it'll be interesting what they're going to run out eventually, but I think for now they've got at least a couple of years worth of content left, and I plan to keep playing it.
The community now can probably be summed up in two factions. Because it's so unique, and all the people left playing this game are clearly going to play it no matter what because they've been through 6.0 and are still here. You've got the 50% that want to revert to pre-6.0. They want their beloved game back, but they're still playing in spite of it because there is no other way to get their tank fix. And then there's the other 50% that have kind of embraced Cold War, just gone, right, well, clearly 6.0 is not going to be reverted, so we'll just play Cold War, enjoy it, and accept it for what it is. And those are like me and Greg and Alfred, who are enjoying what they've changed the game into, and we've just had to roll and adapt with that. I think if you're staying in the game hoping that it's going to be like it was before, you're just going to be disappointed.
Okay, so the Cold Era or the Cold War is the thing to grind now and enjoy the game. So we all agree that the World War II era and the pre-6 game is gone forever and it's not gonna be back. So you have to start realizing that there is a new era, there is a new game, and people try to develop the new mode and bring new features, new things, and new updates. What I was reading about the new era, many people say that it is too much grinding. You have to grind a lot of things, and it takes some time. Do you agree with that? I mean, there is a grind behind everything. If you want to upgrade cannon, if you want to upgrade your armor, and all that stuff. How is this thing going? And we're gonna close with that.
Do you mean the economy of Cold War?
The economy of Cold War.
Yeah. So the main thing that gets leveled at Cold War is the cost of everything. The experience is higher than World War II. The silver is higher than World War II. And yes, the numbers are bigger. It is harder to achieve. However, you have to consider two other aspects. One, the silver income is much more increased. I mean, people who don't even like Cold War, who play World War II, jump into Cold War to make silver. It does earn a lot more. So relatively speaking, the cost is kind of offset. In terms of the experience being more, well, you have to consider these tanks when you start entering Era 2 and Era 3 are the equivalent of Tier 12, 13, Tier 14 tanks. So they are going to cost more. That's just how the game works. You know, as you go up the tiers, things get bigger and better. So, yeah, factually, it is more of a grind, but it's also nothing that you probably wouldn't expect if you look at it reasonably.
Okay, so now we know we're gonna start the new era. How is the population there? I mean, I see that there are some bots in some tiers. I mean, is it true that there are certain number of bot players in certain tiers because the population is not enough to fill them?
It depends on which server you are on and on which time you decide to play. Late night on the EU server, it's pretty much only bots. Like, might be a combined of 10 real players and the rest are bots. The server that is most popular and most popular is the NA. So I live in Sweden, but I always jump onto the NA server because, well, more populated.
Yeah. So that's the solution. You have to switch the servers so you can keep up with the population and avoid the bots. So I think, guys, that we covered the most things on the game in a quick podcast episode because we have a lot of things to say, but we have to keep also time consistent because no one wants to hear 2 hours of a podcast and all that stuff. But for the first time, I think that we did a good product. We did a good job to educate the new players. We did a good job to educate also the players that left the game and they don't want to get back. We are saying that there is a reason to get back, and it's called Modern Era or Cold War, whatever you like, call them. There is a new style in game, but you can keep up with the pace. So, is there anything else to say to close the podcast and say goodbye to the fellow tankers? It's up to you now. Anything you like to add before closing?
Yeah. As I say, I've been playing 7 years. I've seen pretty much everything happen. There is nothing else like it. If you enjoy World of Tanks, try and look past what they've done. This community is one of the most involved and engaged communities that I've seen. You know, I've played other games, Diablo, Borderlands, Destiny. I've never got involved in the community like I have in this one, and so many other people follow suit, which means that they care more and they're more vocal, and they take things like 6.0 more personally, and it upsets them because Wargaming have changed the game that they absolutely love, and they can't find anywhere else, and it tends to lead to resentment and feelings of, well, they can't move on. I've tried to be a little bit more holistic about it. I've seen things that maybe quit the game for 3-4 months at a time, several times. But at the end of the day, I love playing it. So just try and look past it, what they've done, and look what they're doing with it. And if you can find some fun in that, then I think it's still a really good game.
Excellent. Greg, Alfred, any last words?
Well, yeah, give Cold War an honest chance. Like, take a couple of months to play it. Choose one of the lines. I would suggest the American medium lines with the M60s because they are probably the best introduction into Cold War when it comes to tanks. They're easy to play, good guns, good armor, everything. But be careful tree marking too many tanks because Mr. Lemon might be get mad at you.
Yeah, I think we've said it all. I mean, it obviously there are things that people wanted out of the game, and it's not there, and they had to go somewhere else, and that's understandable. You know, we didn't touch on the comp scene very much. 6.0, there was a very robust and vibrant comp scene. 6.0 essentially brought that to a grinding halt. I hear some things that's starting to come back, and I hope it does. That's a great sort of side thing, and it seems like the community wants it, is interested. It also seems like wargaming is trying to embrace that, and maybe that's something that TKN is helping with. And that would be great to bring some of that back to the game as well. But like Lemon said, they're making strides. They're changing. They're trying, and there's still a lot of viable entertainment value to be had there that I think is very necessary these days for a lot of people.
Okay, excellent. I think that we covered the most thing. Thank you guys for being here. Maybe we can say more in a second episode, but that depends if you had enough fun time here in the podcast, because it's something new for you, but it's also something new for me to introduce to my community different games and different people.